Just got to find it in here. Here we go. Notice is hereby given of a regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the district to be held at 105 Port Isabel Road, April 14th, 5:30 today for consideration of the agenda business below. This notice is posted on the office of the district on April 9th, 2021 at 1 p.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. I call this meeting to order. We've already said our pledge and invocation, so we're just going to continue. I would like to move up discussion of which agenda item is this? Item 12? 10. Great. We're just going to move up discussion, continued discussion of item 10 from our workshop. We're going to dismiss Mr. Starkey here. After this? Okay.
Yeah, here's what we were just
okay. About. Yeah, absolutely. So what other questions, Dave or Bill, do you guys have any questions in particular? If you don't, that's okay. Just want to make sure there's an opportunity to discuss.
And the workshop was live for everyone to watch the character. Is that correct? Yeah. We don't have to get into re-explaining everything. We just spent an hour on.
My only concern was the money, right? And my sort of recollection from our meeting with Noe last time was that the money is, not necessarily just free spending. Like there were some concerns about how much we're going to have. So, I mean, I'm all in favor of proceeding with sending this letter, but until Noe sits here and tells me that, yeah, you can do that and not go broke and not have to raise fees significantly, it's just on hold in my mind. I got to make sure that financially we're clear to do this. I think everybody else up here feels the same way. We want to do it. I think it would be a good idea to do it. I know Scott's probably been in favor of this for a long time. I don't want to put some words in his mouth, but he's been working on these projects and bonds for the last decade. So I want to make sure we support everything he's done as chairman. So I would say I'm in favor of submitting that letter, but let's make sure next time we have a report on how does this actually fit into our long-term budget, whether that's we ask Noe to come back or we have Mr. Salazar over there give us a presentation on that. Okay. 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 Mr. Hinojosa there?
I'm here. Good afternoon.
Hello. Did you happen to hear any of that?
I heard your comments, and I heard a part of the comments on the desal too.
Okay. Yes, we're just talking about if we're eventually going to have money for this or not. Because last week you told us that there was, we're in good shape, but we were talking about that key ratio. I think it was like 1.25 was, if I remember out of the top of my head, that we want to be close to that and that we were getting further away from it here in the coming years. So I don't know if you're prepared to make comments on whether the reclamation of effluent water is something we can do financially. And if you are, great, let's hear it. And if not, maybe we can hear your thoughts on it next time.
Yeah, I think if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'd rather get myself more familiarized with the presentation before I give you a comment.
I can respect that, and we would like that as well. We're basically looking to spend $8 million potentially as soon as September over the course of undefined period of time. So what would that look like for us? Charles will give you all the details after the meeting, but if there's nothing else to be discussed, I'll make the motion that we proceed. Imagine 10 is an action item.
Action item 10, which we moved up, was consider and discuss for possible approval of a resolution agreeing to certain requirements of a water smart funding opportunity for planning, design, and construction under the title Water Reclamation and Reuse Program for Water for fiscal year 2021 for proposed Port Isabel Water Reclamation Facility. That's a long agenda.
It is. So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For the record, I'm excusing myself.
Very good. Get that shirt.
Yeah.
We'll get back on our agenda here. Invitation to the audience for public comments. Appreciate you gentlemen coming down, sharing with us. Sounds like we're doing some big projects, so visiting with us down here where our water use is, I don't even know if it's 10% of Corpus, maybe it is. Can I just ask, At the golf course, Dave, there is effluent water from our effluent plant that goes not to the golf course, but goes to the lakes in the South Padre Island community, right? Why can that golf course not use the effluent water to water the golf course?
Transportation. We'd have to move it from there.
So it's a matter of there's no pump there.
Partially, we'd have to repipe.
So it's a matter of repiping.
And then also the salt content. It is very high in salt.
Yeah, we tested it. When I first came back in 2018, I went and tested it.
The quality is on the high side of the salinity, and that's a reason that the state won't approve it.
The state won't approve it for what?
Well,
For irrigation.
Right, because it'll actually happen like it happened years back at the island. We were feeding it straight directly from the wastewater site that way, and the salt content was drying up the grass.
Yeah, it wasn't sufficient. And I sent it to A&M
to get it tested. Why is the salt content higher in effluent water than it is when I drink it?
Oh, the water infiltration from the groundwater coming up on the wastewater side. We've been looking at that side of the wastewater side, and we haven't found any places where it's coming directly into the system. You know, on the piping where it drains out, flushing the toilets, and then the lift stations pumping it back to the sewer plant.
None of that's salty, right?
It's salty enough where it's on the high side. It's not. It's because of the groundwater is salt water.
There's some groundwater somewhere leaking into seeping into our sewage system.
Correct.
And that's increasing the salt content of our effluent water.
Correct.
And would that have a significant? So if it's, how would that then affect our water reclamation facilities?
The area here on this side, we've tested that one, and it's not that high.
So of our two effluent places, or how many
There's
places do we have? Four. So this effluent over here would be better than say the one over there.
Correct. And we figured that side would be better off because it's newer system, but it's somehow more salty.
But I see Jason shaking his head a bit like it's not a big deal. We're gonna the membranes would take care of whatever sort of salt content there was.
Essentially desalinates the PDS.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, the higher the salt content, the more expensive it is to pressurize the system and clean it. But it doesn't affect anything because it'll clean it up anyhow.
Yeah. So if residents of the SPI community put a pump in those little, lakes / ponds and started trying to water their lawns, they would end up with yellow lawns. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. Because I know what percent, maybe you know, Mr. Gomez, of our raw water goes to water the golf course and the community over there? So we know, somebody must know that. Eddie, Charles, you guys know that? What amount of our raw water goes to the golf course?
Oh, it's very small. I mean, with that Klutz media filter.
That's our revenue.
Oh, the raw water. The raw water going to the.
Less than 1%.
Yeah, it's a small.
Really?
Yeah, I would say.
Very much.
No, it's not very much.
Oh, okay.
As a whole. Yeah.
No wonder that we litigated that then for 2 years. Let's move on to our next agenda item then. Agenda item 4.
Oh, are we at 3 or 4?
But do you have public comments?
I have one.
Oh,
I just want to mention that I just got this information from the managers that 2 of our wastewater employees, wastewater treatment plant employees, they acquired their D wastewater license. So it's Lawrence Gonzalez and Emilio Galvan Jr., and they're both on the wastewater side. So congratulations to them. I just wanted to announce it because I told them I do that all the time. So,
well, you tell them we appreciate their study and working at that, and we always love to hear the expertise of our district is increased. Any relation to this, Galvan?
no, sir.
No. Okay. Okay, good. Any other public comments? Item 3. No. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 4. Consider, discuss for possible approval the minutes of the regular meeting from March 24th.
Motion approved.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Item 5, general manager's report. Come on back, sir.
bringing up the latest update on this one, which came in yesterday, and it's the Reservoir Amistad and Falcon Lakes combined. And at the very bottom, the last number there, it has 43 point something in there on the one that I provided for you guys last week, but it changed to 42, like 1% lower than. And I'd like to keep the board updated on it because we do have a drought management out there that's in place now. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we'll get some more rain and we're back above 50% one day. Hopefully it doesn't take a hurricane to do that, but you see that's number.
Let me ask you just off the top of your head, how do we stand at this point in the year compared to other years at this point in the year?
It's happened, I think 2011, we started the same way. And we're concerned about summertime, right? And then we start this conservation measures. But the past few years, it's been okay. It's been on the high side.
So you feel like right now we're low, definitely low compared to normal.
Definitely.
Maybe our lowest of the last 10 years. At this point in the year?
Yeah, 10 years, more or less.
Yeah.
Can you tell have the restrictions been helping? Can you tell from?
As of right now, we haven't seen anything yet because we just started last week, but it'll come in at the on the monthly basis.
I've had a lot of residents asking.
You can see, and it does work. You know, people do concern. They'll keep it on the neighbors and say, "Oh, that guy who is watering." They'll call us, but it does work.
Good to know. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Victor Baldovino, Sprint Access. We will continue to post on social media along with some education on when to water their lawns and things of that nature with the leadership of course. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate your words. By the way, I saw the letter that you guys prepared and put in the last billing statement, right? About, if you, did you have questions during the freeze? So thank you for putting that together, whoever worked on it. I think it was helpful. Did you get any good feedback on it? If not,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. People were very
calling
interested.
in.
Yes.
Asking you, how do I sign up? My Wi-Fi is down.
I think you mentioned that you got quite a bit of views on social media as well.
We did post on social media as well, and every single comment was positive. We didn't have not one negative comment, so that is very telling. Yeah. So we're going to continue that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your work. Agenda item 6, Director of Operations report.
Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. It's our monthly report on call outs and service calls, and comparing March of 21 with March of 20, there was an increase in call outs by 63. Most of these call outs were some of them informational, other than changing meters, faulty transmitters, and work on angle valves. And most of that on the angle valves was either closing or opening because they need to work in a private leak or something of that nature. Or the gardener closed the angle valve, so we had to go out there and open it. On the collection side, excuse me, there was an increase of about 33 calls, and most of that was on preventive maintenance and sewer tabs, along with some sewer backups. And then on a pre-treatment lift station, that one decreased by about 5 call-outs. That was basically due to some of the work they were working primarily with some of these pumps at a couple of these lift stations. But everything else was pretty normal.
Yesterday, it seemed like 5 trucks or something there east of Grand at that lift station. Was there a problem over there?
And yes, that's lift station 19. That's the one that we've been having a little bit of problem with the electrical. And we did have some issues there that we're working on.
Yeah, I figured you did.
How's it going?
Yeah,
Everybody was there.
We've got some parts in order. We had one of the breakers that kind of burned out, so we need to get that fixed. We've had some complaints on that about odor that we're working on as well. I've already talked to the pre-treatment manager, Mr. Galvan, and I discussed that this afternoon also. He got a call, unfortunately. And we're working on trying out some new odor solve out there. So
That's all
hopefully that'll take care of it.
I think it's all, I mean, poop stinks. So we gotta do our part to always, that's an easy one to hopefully fix, you know, as long as we stay on top. Maybe it's not easy, but it's something we have to stay on top of.
Well, that station particularly has always had a problem over there.
Yeah, this guy ran that hotel for years and put whatever you want down the drain, man.
Well, it is a very busy lift station. And I just talked to the lift station manager right before coming to the meeting, and he's going to start by putting some motor blocks out there tomorrow morning. So,
okay, great. Thanks for working on it. Anything else of note? Anybody have any questions?
thank you.
Great. Let's talk about Long Island Village on the district engineer's report, item 7.
All right, so for this item, you know, we'll go into more detail in executive session with our consultation with the attorney. But for the presentation right now, figure we can bring it to our financial advisor. He can just give the update for the financial status of the Long Island Village project. And we're also planning to meet with the Long Island Village group tomorrow morning, just to give them an update after feedback we get here from the board. So let's see, Noah, you're on the line. Are you ready to present?
Mr. Hinojosa, you happen to be there?
I'm right here. I was just trying to press the button. Charles went too fast on me. All right, here we are. Well, thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As Charles alluded to, tomorrow, I believe we have a meeting with the Long Island Village, I guess around 10 o'clock. And the following is what we're about to present to them. I'm gonna see if I can share this with you. I don't know if it was given to you all by staff, a copy of it.
Yes, it was a handout on everybody's table.
But this is pretty much for the benefit of the public, I guess. Basically, what we're going to go over tomorrow, and I don't know if you see my screen there, is the various programs that the Water Development Board has that, for all practical purposes, is the lending facility that probably can give us the most attractive rates, or for that matter, even secure any kind of a loan for Long Island Village. And basically, as you can see there on page 1, we're looking at either funding the improvements on what is called the development fund, either tax exempt or taxable. We still don't know until we have an agreement set up with Long Island Village as to whether the project will be tax exempt or taxable. So the rates that we're looking at is either a 226 rate over 30 years or a 320 rate over 20 years. And you can see the differences there between what an open market financing will cost versus a Water Development Board project. And I can tell you that a Long Island Village may not be able to get this either in the open market or with a bank. So that comparison is probably not a good one to show, but just so that they know when we talk to them tomorrow, this is the difference in rates and why the Water Development Board, for all practical purposes, is the most attractive option for them. So that's page 1. It will be sold as a contract revenue bond. So in essence, what we would do as a district, we would enter into a contract with LIV, and the contract will basically require for them to be assessed, all of their users, a certain amount of money to be able to pay off the obligation that you will be incurring on their behalf. So when we go to page 2, the project consists, and we just ran this as a very preliminary scenario. We're looking at selling two types of bonds, either a tax-exempt financing or a taxable financing. They both are being amortized over 25 years. We don't know whether the taxable option allows us to go out 25. We know that the tax-exempt can go out as far as 30 years. We would finance about 18,455,000 versus 18,645,000 on the taxable. The improvements costs are estimated right now at about 16,562,780 on the both scenarios. It's for water improvements, for sewer improvements. And both will require, since they're revenue bonds, they will require the creation of a debt service reserve fund. They can either pay that with cash, which we believe they have, or we can add that fund to the bond to the bond issue. So under either scenario, we are funding or we are requiring, and this is subject to negotiations, subject to you telling us differently, that this reserve fund be funded at a 1.5 times the average annual payment. So think of borrowing $16 million, think of a payment, just hypothetically speaking, being $1 million. We're going to tell them you're going to have to put in $1.5 million. Why? Well, because if you go and incur this financing and we get hit again by some act of God nature issue, then we're going to have to dip into that reserve to make debt service payments, while some of these residents may not be able to. So we just felt that 1.5 is what we should request versus the normal 1 year average annual. The difference between the two, why is one at $1,589,000 and the other one being $1,780,000? And that's more of a function of interest rate differential between a taxable financing and a tax exempt. You notice in the previous page how literally the difference between one and the other is almost 1 full percentage point. So that's what causes for the average annual payments to be higher on a taxable versus tax exempt, and thus has a direct impact on the size of the debt service reserve fund required. Cost of issuance, we just plugged in a number of 300,000, which includes our fees, includes Attorney General's fees, includes bond counsel fees, and other fees that are affiliated, associated with the issuance of bonds. The additional funds there is just a rounding number, and thus you end up with the uses of funds matching the amount of bond proceeds being issued as sources of funds. So then when you turn the next page, in the next page, we got basically the scenario on a tax exempt basis. If you borrow for them, $18,455,000, you fund the project at $60,562,000. The debt service reserve fund is $1,589,000. We're running a number at about 3%. I mean, an interest rate at a 3%, which is about 75 basis points higher than today's market. This is a pretty lengthy process. Even if you were to borrow the money tonight, or if you want to borrow the money and adopt an order to sell the bonds, we're probably a good 6 months away from funding. It takes a while. Yeah, well, actually, on a defund, it probably takes a little less than the typical SWIFT, the typical other projects, but still, you got to go through a process of approvals on an engineering standpoint and environmental and stuff like that. So we're far away from selling these bonds. We're looking at selling bonds sometime on June 1st of 2022. That's when we're projecting the delivery date to be. The annual payments will be, like you see here, average annual, $1,050,000. Our objective is to have those payments covered 1.5 times, 1.25 times, I'm sorry. That has nothing to do with the debt service reserve fund. This has to do with you assessing from them 0.25% higher than what you required. So what does that mean? When you go to the next column after the yellow column, you see we plug up a larger number than the annual payment on the loan. 1,333,000 to cover 1,058,000. Why? Because in the case of a hurricane or somebody not being able to pay the bills on time or whatever, we want to have our rate structured in a way that we generate a cushion. In fact, we have that with our current rates. In our current rate structure, I suspect we levy or we assess a little bit more to not only pay debt service, but pay operations and have a little bit of a cushion. So if in fact, we're gonna collect 1,323,000 from 1,024 connections, as they have on the top right-hand corner there, the annual payment will be at about 1,295,000, thereabouts, 1,294,000. If you assess it monthly, it's about $108 a month.
Couple questions.
Yes, sir.
Where does that extra $250,000 a year go that we're collecting on them because of the 1.25%?
Excellent question. It goes, in this particular case, I suspect we will have either what we call an extra fund called the Repairs and Replacement Fund, so that once you build the lines, once you build the improvements, you're going to have a Repairs and Replacement Fund so that if something happens, that you have cash there. So that's what we would try to build up, Mr. Chairman.
And that fund's going to end up with what, $5 million in it over the course of this?
It could, but you can also, actually the way it's set up, there'll be two funds that you may want to look into. What is the Repairs and Replacement Fund, and the other one is an Emergency Reserve Fund. And besides the Debt Service Reserve Fund, but you'll be required, I think, by the AG, by covenant, to build up to a certain amount. You don't want to go up to $5 million. You're going to go to an amount that is reasonable, and it could be $1 million a piece.
So we'll have right at the start 1.5 in reserve, right? That'll be there right from the time we get it.
That is correct.
And then on top of that, in a different account, we'll build up this fund that will grow over time because of the difference, the 1.5%. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it is not uncommon to have two different fund accounts, one called the Repairs and Replacement account. The other one can be called an Operation Emergency account.
What happens to that money when it's paid back? When after 25 years in 2047, what happens?
What we try to do at that time, Mr. Chairman, is use those funds to make the last 2-year payments or whatever money's out there, so that you don't have to collect the $108 from the connectors, from the users.
Thank you.
You bet.
Keep going.
Yes, sir. So that's the tax exempt scenario. And you look there on the third column from left to right, the cost of interest at 3% is $8,042,700. When you go to the next scenario, this is on a taxable basis. Look at the third column from left to right at the bottom. That cost is now $11,033,000. So it's almost $3 million differential by going taxable versus tax exempt. We're going out 25 years. We're building the Debt Service Reserve Fund on a 1.5 times basis. We're not using 3% rate. We're using a 3.95 rate. We're closing again on June 1st of 22. And instead of being the monthly bill $108, it's $121. Everything else pretty much the same.
Great.
Then we get into the timeline overview. And this is what comes straight out of the Water Governor's website. We would very likely need to have a pre-application meeting in Austin. I think because of the coronavirus, I think they accept conference calls, and thus, before we get into that pre-app meeting, we got to come to terms between the water district and LIV. I hate to go up to have a meeting with them and start thinking, well, we're thinking about doing this, we're thinking about doing that. We got to cut our business deal first, and then we take it to the Water Development Board. And I think at tomorrow's workshop or session, I suspect they're gonna have a good understanding of what this consists of, and then at that time, our bond counsel will prepare some sort of an operating agreement between us and them that we can then discuss further with the Water Development Board at the pre-app meeting. We will prepare a financial assistance application. We'll do that based on numbers that I just provided to you. We submit it. All those 3 steps literally take not more than a month. But the thing that's going to take longer is coming to terms between us and them. So before the pre-app meeting, we got to have a box in there that says, the Water District and LIV, come to a resolution on how to approach these funds. One of the things that I didn't mention on the previous scenarios, it's not uncommon to also charge an administrative fee or a credit fee. You're a credit facility, and it's your prerogative. It's up to you if you want to do something like that. You would ask me, what will you do with the difference between, what you're collecting from them and the payment? And it's not uncommon for someone like you to say to the applicant, you know what, we're going to charge you $50,000 or whatever number you feel is appropriate for being this conduit authority to have you have access to the Water Development Board.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? Because we have to carry the risk, don't we?
You're carrying the risk, no question.
There should be
yes,
some
sir.
charge for us bearing that risk.
That's right.
Seem reasonable to me. They can't go
Yeah.
to the bank and do it because the bank doesn't think they can carry the risk very well. Do you know how many, what their current revenues are per year?
Charles, it's been a while since I looked at the audit report.
Because we're talking about adding $1,200 a year, $1,200 to $1,400 a year to whatever they're paying right now, or $100 to $125 a month, whatever they're paying. Is that a 15%, 30%, 50% increase? I have no idea how easily they can stomach that.
Yeah.
And I think that ratio seems important to know.
Yeah, we can ask them that tomorrow and send you an email to the board.
I think we need to understand what that ratio is, and I think part of our discussions needs to be, and we'll take your advisement. What would be a good credit charge for us bearing the risk of this significant loan on our own?
Yeah, well, and one of the concerns we have is that whatever that charge may be that we have to collect, whatever that assessment is, what if they don't pay it? I worry about what powers are vested in us or in them to force them to have their member make the payment.
Well, I mean, but can't we assume that a percentage of that money we're holding back is ours? Can't we build that into the agreement?
Oh, yeah, no, we can.
Yeah, so I mean, where they would hold back, they wouldn't have a chance to hold back.
Well, I mean, if we gave them the money and they started doing it, and like next year they defaulted on the loan, right? Then what the heck would we do, right? So that would get into some significant legal stuff where we would have to. I won't be the lawyer up here.
Yeah, we can.
That's the thing. Lawyers can be okay. Well, we'll leave it at that.
There's only one in the room. We have a number. You can say whatever you want.
And he's ours. Any other questions?
Mr. Hinojosa, are you the Hinojosa of Estrada Hinojosa?
Yes, sir, I am.
Very good. I'm looking at your last page. page 6, and it looks like you've been doing some significant work.
Oh, we've been very fortunate, sir. I started my first client was Cameron County Freshwater Supply District #1. So I promised I won't let you guys down, and I just hired 2 people. I mean, I will tell you more about our firm later, but
sure.
We've been very fortunate. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All the stuff that Friesa Nichols was telling you earlier, we're working with Corpus Christi on the desal project. We do a lot of exciting stuff out there.
Excellent.
So then when you go through the process of those boxes, the initial review completeness, then the Water Development Board provides a notice of complete application to us. They take it to the staff reviews. The staff provides a recommendation to the board. The board, which is comprised of 3 board members, approves the application. Then we, between the board, approve the application and getting the closing documents, I suspect that's about 2 months. So, and then the AG is doing the review right after the closing documents are prepared. And then once the AG says okay, then we close. So that's the scoop. That's what we do.
Great. I'll look forward to hearing what comes of it tomorrow. Does anybody have any questions or further comments on it? Hopefully we'll hear a report back to the board. I think this is under executive session today, is it not?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll visit a little bit more on it later. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night. Where are we? Agenda item 8, is that correct? I guess that's my job, huh? Should keep track. Consider and remove from the table the following item tabled at the regular meeting on March 24th, 2021. Consider and discuss for possible approval of FirstNet contract. Do I have a motion to remove from the table? Do I have to have a motion for that? Yeah? Yeah. So, second. All right. All in favor? Aye. Good. Motion is removed from the table. Agenda item 9, consider and discuss for possible approval of FirstNet contract.
So, good evening, gentlemen. We have we had a full presentation at the last board meeting, but so today I won't go into so much detail about
These gentlemen have heard it, right? Yep. Why don't you give me the 30-second version?
Well, I'll go through the presentation as I had it here, but I'm just going to give you a summarized version of the previous presentation for your benefit. So why are we have this item on the agenda? So during the hard freeze, we had multiple system failures caused by the hard freeze. No power, no internet. Our cellular network was severely disabled. No radio communications, no landline phone service, and insufficient backup generation here for the main office. So for 3 days, we were unable to communicate. Phone calls were dropped and others would not go through. We borrowed personal cell phones from employees who had service from other networks to make the calls. The calls that did make it through suffered greatly from call quality issues. Prioritizing and dispatching personnel was hindered by poor communications, and this slowed down our ability to communicate, to coordinate our response, and to inform the public. Go to the next one. One more. There we go. So staff recommendations based on the lessons learned from that event identify 2 areas that will be addressed with this proposal from FirstNet. Number 1, evaluate cell phone service providers for mobile, voice, and data services for a network with better reliability. This would have improved communication among staff to efficiently coordinate the emergency response. Number 2, add internet failover devices to critical locations. These devices will provide a backup internet connection using a cellular network if the primary connection goes down. The proposal from FirstNet includes cradle point failover devices. All the other proposals that we received only address the first point of improvement. Now, I'm going to introduce Liana Cano. Just to, she's a representative from FirstNet. She'll give you just a short overview of the differences between FirstNet versus our commercial carriers.
So some of you met me virtually at the last board meeting. I know you said you wanted a 30-second spiel.
There you go.
I'm going to give you that. So first, I want to thank you guys for your time and Eddie for putting together this presentation. But I wanted to reiterate what delivering a public safety broadband network really means. It's not only about getting connected, but staying connected, most importantly. FirstNet is going to give Laguna Madre priority and preemption 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's unmatched in this industry. When opting into FirstNet, you will receive wireless coverage that reaches more than 99% of Americans. When I talk about priority and preemption, I want to give you an example. What does that look like? We all know South Padre Island is a hotspot for spring break, other large events throughout the years. The causeway, congested, you can't get through. In a network standpoint, FirstNet is going to give you a bridge over the causeway to stay connected no matter what congestion is, any type of hurricane, hard freeze, any type of natural disaster, you will always stay connected because you have your own tollway network. So that's really what FirstNet is built for. It's a government contract. AT&T was awarded the bid for the next 25 years to help build this network. So when you're getting FirstNet, you're not getting AT&T. AT&T is helping build the network, but you're on a whole nother network. Nobody else is allowed on this network but our first responders and those who support them, which is also unmatched, in my opinion, with anyone in the world. FirstNet's mission is to constantly create innovative ways to modernize your communications with the latest technology so you can respond not only faster, but smarter and safer. One of the options being a cradle point. Now, on our Zoom call, I have David Champion. I would like to open it up to the board just to ask a few more questions with our FirstNet specialist. He covers South Texas. So not only would I be here locally, but David as well for any type of issues you may have.
Great. Is FirstNet an AT&T company?
So it's a government company. David, I'll let you answer that question. Did you hear the question?
I did. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and executive staff. Can you hear me?
Yes. Proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So no, FirstNet is not part of AT&T. FirstNet is a government authority. It is a department that's housed within the Commerce Department. It has, this is from congressional approval back in 2012. So this department was set up with the express intent of establishing a mobile broadband wireless network, cell network for short, that would service public safety. And again, as Liana mentioned, those that support public safety, such as your entity that provides critical infrastructure. Water is considered a critical infrastructure. So FirstNet is designed as a network that supports on a day-to-day basis and certainly during an emergency event as well. So it is not any part of AT&T. AT&T merely is the government contractor behind the scenes, as Liana mentioned, building out the network, maintaining it and operating it in accordance and with government oversight from FirstNet Authority. So I hope that answers your question.
So FirstNet is a government entity of the federal government?
That's correct. That's correct.
So it's a not-for-profit, it's just a part of the government. It's not a private for-profit company.
So the only, and that's a great question. So it's this, what has happened with the development of FirstNet is a public-private partnership in that AT&T comes to the table as a private entity to build the network, but the public side of that is the FirstNet Authority, obviously, that is housed within the Commerce Department. And the reason they put it in the Commerce Department is because this is subscriber-based. And what do I mean by that? You today in your operation with whatever carrier you use, you pay subscriber fees for the use of your phones, tablets, equipment. The monies that are collected also for FirstNet go back into the network to build the network. So it's a re-enhancement, it's a reinvestment of monies. The money doesn't go to AT&T, the money actually goes to FirstNet as your subscribership, and it's built back into the network. So that's how the public-private piece of it is allowed to function, and that's how the subscriber piece is allowed to function, and the monies are driven back in to build the network. So AT&T makes no profit off of this. This is strictly a government project. and the money's funded. The monies are inherently funded, and it's going to be like that through the course of the development of the project, and certainly beyond as the project sustains itself.
Now, one thing you didn't get to hear at the last meeting, Chairman, was when Governor Abbott opted into this was right after Hurricane Harvey. So we were able to utilize FirstNet in, show him exactly what that meant. Deployables come with this network. Governor Abbott made sure that 5 always stayed in the state of Texas, since we're so large. No other state has that.
5 what?
Deployables.
Like they bring down local.
So it's like a cell site on wheel. It's a truck with an antenna, and on one of the references that Eddie got, Steve Herrera actually mentioned that one was brought down when they were without service, and it covered them until service was able to go back up.
Yeah, and we talked about this issue during.
So thank you, Liana. Thank you, Liana and David, for filling us in on the features of your network.
Thank you.
So now, at the last meeting, the board asked me to find some references from current customers and to find out what current customers are saying. So I started with the City of South Padre Island Fire Chief. I have a few comments here that I can share with you. Better than T-Mobile, much better than Sprint. No drop calls during spring break, unlike some other networks. We have Hidalgo County Sheriff's Office, Chief Steve Herrera, went down once during a hurricane for about 12 hours. They set up a mobile truck that worked great. They respond quickly to problems. Next we have-
Can I save you, Eddie?
Yes.
We read them all, so we see.
You did?
Yeah,
okay, great. Wonderful.
Save you just reading what's up there.
Let me ask you something. So when the freeze happened, this last freeze, you say you have 5 mobile in Texas. So how would you distribute that? In other words, where would we stand?
Well, we actually have 76 deployables total for FirstNet. But David, the question was, because I mentioned that we have 5 deployables here during the hard freeze, how would they stand for that? So if you want to just reiterate how a deployable is requested, it's not only for emergencies. You can actually request them during spring break. You know you're going to be congested. You can request it so far in advance, and it'll be here. But I'll let you go further.
Is that just part of the fee then? It's not extra or anything like that?
No, it's in the contract for sure.
It's included. There's
So
no additional.
you wouldn't know we had a freeze for the whole state. Everybody's asking for it.
So with the
Would
freeze,
you have enough coverage with the 70-something?
so David, you want to go over how we held up during the freeze? No deploys were needed in this area, and what helped with the backup on that?
Sure, thank you. And so when we look at providing enhanced network coverage, because this is a public safety grade network, that affords you as a subscriber the opportunity to take advantage of a network that has to be online 24/7, 365, because public safety is riding on it. So how we approach that challenges us from a different, say from a commercial perspective. So we roll when there's a situation, whether that's a cell site that's down or being impacted. The hard freeze is a good example of that. That was a unintended cause beyond our control in terms of electrical power, utility power being essentially turned off. Our sites are hardened. What I mean by that is we have generator power or we have battery backup power at the sites. Now, generator power will run. It's much better as long as the generator's fueled and able to function. Freezing roads can obviously, you have to refuel generators, so that caused some issues for us. Battery backup systems have a finite life to them because they're batteries. And so they had to be recharged or replaced. But what we do is we roll crews to take care of that. As soon as the coast is clear, so to speak, the roads are passable without injury to personnel. And the hard freeze challenged, it was a statewide event. We didn't roll any trucks. We had 2 requests for these cell on light truck assets. But we weren't able to roll the trucks simply because, well, one, we couldn't get to the ART, and two, the roads were just not passable. Once they were, then we were able to roll. But by then, power was starting to restore. It was rotating. I think here in the Valley, we were on the tail end of that. I think all of us can probably point to some situation where some people were without power 24, 36 hours. With me, I was out for 5 days straight. So it was a great challenge. I say simply this: the fact that you have a public safety grade network that is not a commercial carrier, that I want to make sure that the distinguishing factor here for your consideration is, one, you would not be riding on a commercial network. You would be riding on a public safety grade network. And so therefore, the need to keep the network operating is paramount. Contractually, we are obligated to get sites. If there's an issue with a site, contractually, but with government oversight, we have 14 hours to get that site up and running. That's a standard service level agreement that the government has in place as part of the contract. So as soon as we're aware that there's a site outage, we have 14 hours to get that site operational. However that looks, whether that's a truck, whether that's equipment that has maybe failed or faulted and we need to get it replaced. So we need to get the site back on the air. In the effort to be totally transparent with you regarding sites in your area, we did have one site in the Port Isabel area that did hiccup, and technology will hiccup. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We did have one site, but I would ask you to keep in mind that cell coverage is engineered and designed on an overlapping bubbles. What I mean by that is sites are placed and coverage is dispersed to be sure to overlap among sites. So if one site drops momentarily or whatever, the other sites can pick up. Could be a little bit reduced traffic, but nevertheless, you're still operational until the fail site comes back online. So in the Port Isabel area and including South Padre Island, City of, there's 7 sites total that service that area. And out of 7, we had one that did go offline for less than 12 hours. But we brought it back online when we replaced the batteries, and it was back functional. But the other 6 sites maintained and provided coverage.
So what happened when it went down for less than 12 hours? Did that mean like some portion of the Port Isabel area did not have cell coverage, or
no?
What's the actual effects?
And that's a great question. What happens is, the thing to keep in mind when we think about cell coverage is cellular coverage is really based on an outdoor metric. It's designed to be used outdoors, but we all know we use our phones indoors. We're doing that today, correct? I'm talking inside my home. Well, not my home, but I'm talking inside a building. So what happens when a site tends to drop is the in-building penetration, the in-building signal availability may diminish a little bit. Now, that can be remedied by sometimes moving just to a different part of the building or going outside, or it just, sometimes even just turning around because of the way the antenna propagation is dispersing the signal. It doesn't go off the air. You just may have a slow connection. You can usually make calls. You can usually send text. What I mean by somewhat degraded is if you're trying to watch a movie, and I hope you're not during working hours, you might have a little bit of a slow uplift with Netflix. But if you're sending an email, a phone call, or a text, that data generally passes with no problem. Does that help you?
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, it didn't actually answer what happened during.
They're overlapped.
So there was no disruption? Is that the?
You could have had a drop call, but you were never without service. Our other cell sites helped cover the tower that was down.
Covered during
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah, I asked Chief Pig about his phone service during that event, and he said that he always had connection. He was never completely down, but he did have some quality issues.
What happens if you take more than 14 hours to get something back up, since you only have 14 hours?
David, did you hear that question?
Yeah, I did.
Give us back
Yes, so
our
what we
money
do
for a year.
I wish we could do that. So what we do is we start communicating. Well, there's constant communication going on with the end users to notify them of the status of.
There's no actual like monetary penalty or anything. It's just like it's an internal, mandate to be done and to fix it within 14 hours.
Well,
it's not. You just keep working until you get it. Is that right?
Right, but it is important. It is important, yes, but there is a report that has to be submitted to the FirstNet Authority regarding network health.
Okay, great.
How the network performed, and they make a note of it. And yes, could there be a penalty at the end of the year? They may go back and look and say, "Hey, guess what? This didn't work too well. How do we make it better?" Right. So there is constant monitoring at the authority level of the health of the network and performance. And they do need to hear from you as the end user to enhance that conversation. If it's not working for you, because you're paying monies to be a part of this as a subscriber, they want to make sure you're getting your bang for your buck, and they need to hear from you as well. So if you're not happy with it,
hear from us. The last question would be, have you had any internal discussions after the freeze, since you weren't able to deploy any of your things, to make sure the next freeze that you deploy ahead of time? Did those discussions happen?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a continuous improvement plan piece that we work on in staging assets. How do we do it? How do we get them? Where do we put them so that we can roll? Interesting fact, we all live here in the Valley. I live in Weslaco. We had ice on the roads. Expressway was closed at some point. Surface roads were closed. So it was a great challenge. I think in the Valley, we were able to recover from that rather quickly because of the ground temperature rising. And so the freeze, the ice would melt away. Other places in Texas didn't fare so well. Roads were iced over for 3-4 days in some cases. Yes, absolutely. The continuous improvement piece is to always monitor and how do we do it better.
So to add to Adam's question, then if we have a hurricane approaching, are you going to bring them down, or we have to request it?
We start staging. No, we start staging. We start staging prior to. We start watching hurricane tracking. And having lived on the coast like you all my life, something will change with that tracking, usually 24 hours out. And so we make a note of where can we stage, because if we have to move those assets, we got to be able to get out. Or if we got to move them in, we got to be able to move them in. So we're continuously monitoring. There's a whole team that gets stood up during an emergency event like a hurricane, a weather event, to start doing that. And it's a chess game. I'll be totally frank with you. It's a chess game. Do we need them here? Do we need them there? How do we get them there? And that's not only trucks, that's generators and personnel. It's a whole team.
Would Lmwd be privy to where you're at? Would you keep communication open with them?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's our job.
We don't have to request that information.
So yeah, so
that's the next slide.
It is important. Yeah, I think Eddie has some information, but it is important to hear from you as the customer to say, hey, we're having some trouble. We're not communicating. This site, that site, or something's going on. Can you, number one, help me understand what's going on? Number two, can you provide me some help? And what does that help look like? Absolutely. That's exactly what we're here for.
Okay.
Do it, Eddie. Let's hear it.
Let's talk about our current contract. The district has a limited data plan from T-Mobile, which is effectively a pool of data. Staff uses data for primarily for business email and for photos. Typically, this pool of data is used up within the first 5 days of the billing cycle. After that point, all data district-wide is throttled to the minimum speed of 2G. This becomes nearly unusable for all uses except as the last resort. This problem is exacerbated during an emergency because all other T-Mobile users are jumping on the same cellular network at the same time because they don't have internet, making it even slower. So I highlighted here what we're currently paying and the features of that system.
How long?
We do not have a formal contract, so we can cancel at any time. That's
we're
right.
Jumping $10,000, right? We're going from 8,900 to.
So now let's go to the next slide. And then these are the 4 proposals that we have. Only the FirstNet proposal includes the cradle point failover devices. So that's what that first section shows. And the second section is the difference between FirstNet and these other plans is that FirstNet includes tethering, which converts your phone into a hotspot during a disaster. It's a very helpful feature. And they also have unlimited data on the wireless hotspots and USB devices. So the monthly cost, you can see is cheaper with FirstNet versus the other commercial carriers. And that's including the monthly cost for cradle points, which none of the others offer. So the staff recommendation is to go with FirstNet.
So if we did absolutely nothing, you're at like 9,000 a year. To do this, we're at 18,500. Right? If we did absolutely nothing, just kept it the way it was, we'd be at almost $9,000.
So our current cellular is $9,000 a year.
Right.
It's
$742 a month.
Correct.
89.
Right. So that's about what we pay. Is that our contract, or we can't get like when we hit our limit, we're at 2G. That's it. We don't pay extra. Like my teenage daughter sends 500 more texts.
That's right.
Full of emoji things. Okay, good. So now we're stepping up to $15.34 a month.
That's right.
So we're doubling what we're paying. And
is it that?
Yeah, so that's right here, right? $15.34.
Correct.
I don't understand then what these quotes are from the other
Yeah,
guys.
because it doesn't seem right if we're paying 9.
Well, that was for the tethering, right? That added some other features. Tethering.
We're comparing a limited data. You're comparing a limited data plan versus an unlimited data.
Yeah, what is that? What these are? What are these ones?
Unlimited data plans.
So that would be us switching to those.
Correct.
Switching from what we're currently at to those.
Correct.
But you're saying
Correct.
we don't like these because it's not part of the FirstNet system, which seems superior during an emergency.
Yes. So we would want the ability to have a non-congested network which has its own services that isn't going to become bogged down during a disaster, which was part of the problem that we had with during this last event.
Great. So give us one total upfront number that we're looking at investing in this, because I see some other $6,000 on the next page. So that's our monthly commitment is $1,500 or $1,534. What's this other stuff?
No, the
oh, that's discounts.
Yes, they're offering us some discounts on that.
Board members all get a new iPhone?
No.
Rented, of course, not a gift.
No.
Okay. How do board members get to key into this? Because honestly, that was a major problem in the last one. As we know, Carlos, how would a board member, how would all of you guys will be able to communicate, but how do we get to communicate?
So, David, would a board member be eligible to be on the Laguna Madre district to add on there for FirstNet?
Right. So there's several ways to do that. I think primarily, well, so the leading question for me would be, are the devices that the board members use provided by the district, or are they self-provided by the board member?
Self-provided.
Okay. Then we do have a way to get you there. It's through our retail side, so to speak. So what we're dealing with right now is the government side of business, government contracting, right? This is you're a government entity. And so we're looking at devices that are purchased by and used by the entity. From a individual perspective, we do have ability to help you on that side as well. So Liana and I can help you with that. There is a way to get you there should you decide to do that. Absolutely.
I would like to hear for the next meeting what that would look like, that whenever a board member came on, they could maybe somehow sign up for this for the retail side. And to me, it makes sense that would be provided by the district so that board members can be in touch. You know?
Agreed.
Why couldn't we just add 5 phones?
Exactly. That's exactly what
Yeah, just add 5 phones to the service.
You can do that.
We have 30 on it now.
The The good thing about FirstNet is the DIR contract, which means you get the DIR discount. So one thing you can see on here is all the iPhone 11s are free. The USB 800 hotspots are free. Every 12 months, you guys are eligible for what we have on promotion for our free unlimited agency paid devices. So even if devices start going down in a year, you guys are going to be handed whatever we have on promo, which is usually the latest and greatest. So when it comes to adding 5 more, it's going to be probably a lot more economic sense. It's only $44.99 per device. Unlimited talk, text, and tethering. Now we've mentioned tethering this whole time. We talked about throttling. We are not allowed to throttle you. You will never slow down after 22 weeks on your data or your hotspot. So if you need to have access to your computer, you can hotspot your computer all day long, run your systems. I know that was one of the main reasons we're getting a Cradle Point, which I don't know, I don't believe you were able, you weren't on the last one.
I picked it up. I figured it out. Yeah,
so it's basically backup internet for both sides.
Good. I get sick of getting throttled. Every night I go home.
Every day.
Now we're using it for emergency.
Well, I mean, let's discuss that at the next meeting. I don't think board members should get a phone for personal use, but certainly like, hey, put this in your cabinet, emergency comes up, turn it on, and then you can communicate with Carlos.
One of the things that I see
I think it's
emergencies happen.
Yeah.
You never know when the emergency is going to happen, especially like hurricane season, tornadoes, thunderstorms that come to here in one evening. It happens.
Around the corner.
I would just recommend that the board gets a phone too.
I think the bat phone is a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Just use it first.
Yeah, you just have it for whenever you need it. Hey, pick it up and have it. But, you know, let us see the difference, because at the same time, you know, I guess during an emergency, I can always turn another phone on, carry it in my other pocket. So it's not a big deal. Good. Thanks, you guys. That's the presentation. Is this an action item?
It is. No, this one, item 9.
So we basically need to approve or adopt this FirstNet, or staff recommendation is that we adopt FirstNet.
Either that or
approval of a FirstNet contract. Great. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll motion
FirstNet. Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Great. Congratulations for FirstNet. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On the phone there. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. We've covered agenda item 10. This is like way too long. Chairing the meeting. I can't believe it. We're going to consider and review expenditures, agenda item 11 for March 16th to March 31st. Have an acknowledgement or any questions? Acknowledged by Mr. Bowder, acknowledged by Mr. Donahue. That's all we have to do, right? It's just an acknowledgement. I acknowledge they're there. And with that, we will enter executive session permitted by the Open Meetings Act. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor, aye. Meeting is hereby adjourned.